Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Prompt Engineering 101. This is an workshop where we are going to learn how to talk to AI. Just to get this out of the way, because I'm sure a lot of people will have questions about this. We're not going to write any code today. So you literally need to know no languages to join this workshop. There are no prerequisites. You don't even need to have an account because ChatGPT is free, right? Whether you are a programmer, not a programmer, if you are working with AI, you can attend this workshop and like pretty much get all the value out of it. So without further ado, let's get started. My name is Dharma. I'm the founding engineer here at Codedex, and I have built and supported the platform since day one. Yeah, as you might see, I when I'm not coding, I really like reading light novels, watch anime, read manga, and play a lot of Souls games. And even though I said we're not gonna write any code today, I use Neovim, by the way. So just to get it out of the way. So yeah, that's me. Um, this workshop is just a piece, just one chapter of a new course that I wrote on Codedex. It's called Generative AI or GenAI. And this is the second chapter that we'll be covering today. All right, and we're going to talk about prompt engineering today. Before we get started, though, so you can choose whichever platform. You can use Claude, you can use ChatGPT. I don't have a preference for it because these rules that we'll be learning, these formats that we'll be learning, will be applicable almost everywhere. Just pick whichever you are comfortable with. I'm just going to add a window, a ChatGPT, not even logged in window, just to give you like an anonymous experience, right? Like it has no biases, nothing. Just log into your favorite LLM provider, ChatGPT from OpenAI or Claude from Anthropic, or if you have any open source models like QuenB set up on your local Llama, that also works. So yeah, literally no setup. Just go to chatgpt.com and you're good to roll. Just to start off, just to kick off this workshop, I have a question for everyone. So even if we ask AI the same thing, why does it give very different answers? And for that, I just want to type out these two prompts, one after another. So the first one, I'm just gonna say, explain emojis, right? And sure, it gave a nice explanation. Emojis are small digital icons to express emotions, ideas, activities, objects. Gave a few examples, added some information about what kind of emotion they represent, tone they represent. But then now I want to try the second prompt, which says, explain emojis to an ancient Egyptian scribe who already loves hieroglyphs. Give me one analogy and max 100 words. Right. It give me all this information. I don't want to read all of that. So let's see how ChatGPT is going to explain emojis to, let's say, like a 17th century or like a 16th century, like a hieroglyph who writes on pyramids with all those symbols, images, right, in their language. It says, hey, ancient tribe, imagine emojis as a new set of hieroglyphs. So it just took off from like, you already know what hieroglyphs are, what pictures are. It not mentioned the word pictures for quick messages. So instead of carving falcon eye or bead to add meaning, modern people just tap tiny symbols into their text. And yeah, so we asked it to do the same thing. Like the first one says, hey, explain emojis. And then the second one specified a couple of things like who it needs to explain to, what kind of information this person already has, what kind of information it needs to include as an analogy, right? So it included emojis are digital writing, what hieroglyphs are to papyrus, which is okay. That's a funny word analogy. And then it said, hey, just give me 100 words. So if we count it, it might be around 100 words, a little less, a little more, but it'll try to fit it in, right? So we asked it the same thing, but we just switched and asked it in a little different way, and we got completely different answer, right? That's the power of prompting that I want to emphasize here. So what we are going to talk about in the next 60 minutes is just to develop a mental model on like how LLMs work, what kind of information they take in, and how they build the prompt and like how they start generating. And then we're going to start using different prompting techniques, which are 5 of them, and they'll help you fix most of your bad prompts. And then we'll work together on fixing a bad prompt. And then towards the end, we'll talk about safety and limitations about AI. And this includes when you should trust the output, when there are some problems, when you should be careful while dealing with AI, and yeah, like what are the limits of AI and what it can do, right? What it can generate. Yeah, let's start with part one. But before we move though, anybody have any questions? I just want to take like a minute. Uh, is this for general AI prompting or for AI and coding? Well, you can use it for AI and coding too, but it also works in general AI prompting. So regardless of the use case, these techniques that you learn, you can put them to use in coding and out of coding too. So pick your poison, I guess. Cool. Okay, I'm just gonna continue then. So well, I'm gonna dump it down a little bit. It's not like I can't teach you how to build like a full AI, like an LLM in like an hour. But let's just go with this analogy. AI is good at predicting, and what it does is it can predict the next token. So if you give this little line, let's go back to ChatGPT. I'm gonna close this, open it again. I'm gonna say the cat sat on the right. I'm not gonna say what the next word should be. It's gonna say the cat sat on the mat. It's a simple completion sentence, but it also gave me like a couple more options. But the traditional one is mat, right? So as you might imagine, it's what it's doing is it it gets trained by researchers, scientists, machine learning scientists, based on a lot of data on the internet, like billions and billions of gigs of data, bytes of data. And what it does is it pieces them into small chunks, which are known as tokens, right? And what it's good as is predicting the next token, that the next most likely token. So here it said, hey, like it could be mat, but it could also be sofa, windowsill, roof, right? So AI does not think of sentences as a whole. What it does is, hey, given that everything I have so far, what should be the next likely token? Then it adds that to the existing list and then says, hey, given I have so far, what should be the next existing token? And then generates the next token, right? And it keeps generating you the whole token and you get the full response out and the output back, right? So what it's not doing is it's not making a database call. It's not going through like a SQL server or a MongoDB to check some things, right? It just tries to continue the text in a way that it has seen previously when it was being trained, right? And it will pick the most plausible token, the next most predictable plausible token. And so this is exactly the reason why if you explain to AI, like basically think of it as monkey see, monkey do, right? So if you can make it aware by typing out what kind of responses you want, what kind of responses you're expecting from it, it is going to be more likely to generate exactly looking responses, right? And that's exactly also the reason why it might be shaky on facts, right? So when you are looking at a chat, like a window like this, let's just get it clear. The model, whenever you type in any message, so like I can type a bunch of messages, right? Like, uh, what are some good completion sentences? Like, teach me how to code, right? Now this might take a while and get back. I'd be happy. So see, like it stopped, right? Like it's trying to figure out what should be the next specific token. So like it keeps generating tokens one at a time. And then as it to teach me coding, like it generate a couple of lessons, small lessons for me. So here's the thing. This particular model, this particular instance has only the memory of all of this that's written in the chat, right? So even if I type in continue teaching and I send it back to it, what it's going to get is all of this information, all of this text, even what I sent previously, and the new text attached to it in an array. And it's going to run all of that again, right? It has no memory. It doesn't hold on to any particular piece of memory. Whenever you wanted to predict something, you send it all the stuff, and then based on all the stuff it has, it gives you the response back, right? And then it gives you the next response back. You type something, it gets all of it back, and then it gives you the next response back. So it sees every message in the chat on every single time you ask it anything. It sees its own replies, what it has said previously, and whatever you type in. But what it doesn't see usually is other chats, unless like I guess there are providers now who are giving you like a local database where like a model has memory about everything that you chatted it with. But in this kind of an anonymous login, it's not gonna have any information about what kind of environment it's running in or like who am I, right? Because it has no login information. You don't have access to files, emails, screen, like you cannot see what's on my screen, of course, right? Like browser would forbid it. And most clearly, what you meant but did not say, right? Like AI is terrible at guessing. Like it cannot guess what you are thinking if you don't put it into words to it, right? It won't like I'll try to predict what it thinks is the most likely thing that you are expecting, but not exactly what you were thinking out loud. Whatever you are trying to make it say, right? Whatever you are trying to make it generate. So the model sees everything in the chat window. It doesn't see anything outside of it. And every time you type in, all of that history goes back to the model and it generates the next message and you see the output of it. Right. So if you type in vague responses, if you just say, let's close the window and coffee, give me coffee. So it's not gonna know that I want real coffee, and what it should have given me is like a list of cafe near me. It just generated a coffee and it's like, here, you can have the coffee, right? Because I did not put it into words, it not taken and put in the effort to maybe look around in the map, like to give me a list of all the coffee shops that are nearby me, right? And so the prompt is the only dial you have that you can actually control. The prompt is the primary way that you're going to interact with AI. You're going to type in your messages and it's going to read it and then respond it back to you. So the better, the clearer, the more clear intent you convey to it, the more structured, correct, and expected responses you'll get out, right? If you type in random stuff, well, you're only going to get back random stuff, right? And so here's my proposition for this workshop. Prompting is a skill. It's not a vibe. Even though we say vibe coding, or right, like you can just code white code apps. It's not that. Like if you just ask it to, I can say, hey, let's go back to ChatGPT. I can say, make me Instagram, right? Like that's like it's almost as not close to, but it's almost like it's not even it's not even like understanding what I mean by make me Instagram. It just thought like I'm asking it to make me an Instagram account when I wanted to generate an app for me, right? So if you do not specify what you want exactly, now if I say like build me the Instagram application, then it's gonna get into like it's gonna understand that hey, like this user wants me to build the app, right? And then even then, instead of building it, it just continues on like what kind of infrastructure I can, what can I do for you and all of that, right? But it doesn't actually start anything because it can't, right? Um, so cool, yeah. So be specific with the prompts. That was the lesson there. So here are 5 techniques that will help fix most of your bad prompts, and this will work everywhere, across any model, um, across any tool that you're using, no matter what platform. Like if you're using the Cloud app or Cloud Code or Codex, or like you're running like an API, right? It'll work everywhere. So be specific, right? Let's keep going. So I'm just gonna type in explain Breaking Bad. Not bad. Oh wait, I don't want to read all of that. So that's it. I want like like a one paragraph explanation. It just give me an essay. I don't want to read all of that. So here, what I can say is explain season 1 of Breaking Bad. I'm gonna be as specific as I want. Like I just want to know about season 1, nothing after it. And since most of you in the community know I already watch a lot of anime, I'm gonna say to someone who only watches anime, uh, no spoilers. I'm gonna skip past 3, and I'm gonna say, hey, give me only a max 100 words. I don't wanna read like a full essay. So it went out to say it's like a dark anime. Okay, that has me interested already. Where an ordinary NPC suddenly gets on a new dangerous path. Is it talking about Walter as an NPC? That's crazy. A struggling chemistry teacher learns he has a serious illness and decides to use his genius level science skills to make money in the criminal world. Well, and then it just continued on with the explanation. But you see like how different it is, right? Like I clearly specify what I want and I clearly get the output and I can control it to a certain extent of what I want, right? So if I'm being very specific with what I want, if I'm asking it very specifically what I want, it's gonna be highly likely to give me to respond in a way that satisfies these specificities, right? Um, and now we also want to give it context. And what does this mean? Now I can say, hey, recommend me a game. Uh, recommend me a game. And it's gonna say, okay, I wasn't even thinking about any of computer games. Like maybe I was thinking about, let's say, like outdoor games or like indoor games, like Uno or whatever, right? Like not non-digital games, right? It did not know, right? It just thought that I was talking about, maybe I was talking about computer games and just went on to list like a list of games on computer. So now I'm gonna say recommend me a game, and now I want to give it context, right? So um, I am a full day office worker who has no time to do anything else. I just want to chill with my friends at the end of the day. Suggest co-op games that are chill, right? I can say that. So I gave it more context about what kind of game I'm expecting from it. Not just to put me on a random path about, hey, you can play Elden Ring after you're tired on a full day's work, right? And then it toned it down, right? It recognizes it's easier to jump. It doesn't push you for missing days. It's fun if you're half tired and chatting, and it's cooperative. No sweat boys in the chat. I gave like a couple of recommendations for it, right? So the specific you are and the more context you provide, it's gonna try and do its best to guess for you, but it's not gonna know the context. Now, if you were to translate this in let's say in like a software engineering environment, then you can say, hey, build me this feature in my app. But if you don't give it context that if the app is running in like a limited bandwidth environment, so if the request capacity needs like an egress or ingress bandwidth of like 10 mbps, but you only have limit of like 1 mbps, then it's going to make its best guess and your system's going to break. It's not going to know, right? So if you don't give it context about what kind of system you are building, right? Or what kind of environment you're trying to prompt it in. It's going to try and do its best to guess, but it might end up guessing wrong things, right? If you're not giving it context. And so, yeah, how much more context should you add? More. That's what Kobe Bryant said, right? I just wanted to put it that. So like anytime you think you have enough context, you need to add more context. And if you add more context, you just need to add more context. And that's the context, right? Okay. Next thing is assign a role. So gonna close this again, open it again. And this time we're gonna say, uh, is my resume any good? Uh, and then so gonna resume templates in text. Not sure which one's a good one. Let's pick this one. Really? Okay, there we go. There, copied it. Now I'm gonna paste it in. And then it's gonna say, yes, it's a decent starting resume, but its current state I'd rated 6 out of 10. And I gave a list of like what it needs to be fixed. And oh my god, it just like this is what I'm talking about, right? Like every time you ask it something, if you're not telling it what you need, it's just gonna give you like an essay. I wouldn't sit here reading essays all day, right? I'm too tired to do that. So we need to assign it a role, right? Right now it's just acting as some random voice. Like it has no idea. Like, is it a recruiter that is trying to be this, or is it so here's the general rule, right? If you don't assign it a role, it's just gonna average out the internet voice that it has been trained on. It's gonna pick the most generic voice, right? And of course, like the companies that run these models also have like a hand in what kind of voice it has. So it's not overly harsh, or it's not overly helpful, or it's not overly like it's not doing something extra, right? They try to tone it in. But you need to be specific about what kind of voice you want to talk it in. So for instance, if you're trying to learn, let's say Python, and you say, teach me Python. Now, wouldn't it be better if I just tell it, uh, like imagine you are a patient, experienced coding teacher. I want to learn Python. Please uh, tell me where should I start, right? So I'm assigning it the role of a patient coding teacher, and let's just run it and see. Like it's going to be kind, right? It's gonna say a good way to learn Python is to treat it like a learning spoken language. Uh, but you can see the change, right? And now I'm gonna say, you are a strict and angry coding teacher. I want to learn Python. Please tell me where should I start? Fine, you want to learn Python? It just changed the tone immediately, right? Like it just went off it just took out all the guardrails. Like, if you want to learn Python, I'll teach you Python. Um, so stop looking for the perfect roadmap and start writing code. So like see the difference? Like it just changed, right? Even though we're asking it the same thing. I want to learn Python, where should I start? But the way I ask it and the way it assumes the persona is completely different. So coming back to the resume example, we're gonna try this one. So I'm gonna go back to the resume. Well, there should be a copy button, right? Yeah. Um, we're gonna say, I'm just gonna make this a little smaller so I can read uh, the prompt. So I'm gonna say, you are Gordon Ramsay reviewing my resume like it's a failing dish. Brutally honest, specific, no sugarcoating. What makes you bin it in 10 seconds? And which three fixes matter most? Right. Previously, it gave me like a long list of things that I need to fix and look at. But God damn, like I don't want to go through all of this. I just want like, give me the top three fixes and what makes it like the quickest. Like, and what you would look at in 10 seconds and like what would matter the most, right? So now it's gonna say, All right, Gordon Ramsay mode. I picked the resume and class edit for it. My first, where's the bloody engineer? I see buzzwords and make claims, almost no technical evidence. I wouldn't necessarily be in it immediately, but it just changed its tone, right? Like it just started speaking like Gordon Ramsay. And it even goes so far as to say, like, this is serving plain boiled chicken and then calling it QZ. Right. So assigning a role is very, very important. Be specific, give it enough context what you are trying to ask, and then assign it a role to tell it what it needs to act as. Is it your experienced coding peer programmer? Is it your tennis teacher who is drafting schedules for you? Or is it your gym coach who is try- creating schedules for you, like making your gym, you're planning your diet, right? You're making your gym routine, planning your diet. So assigning a role help will help regulate AI in which like how it should act, how it needs, what it needs to think about, how it needs to act, right? How it needs to respond. So yeah, if if you get assigned a role of a sandwich, then you are that sandwich, I guess, right? Cool. Okay, so be specific, give it enough context, and mention what role it needs to play, right? So those are the three techniques. We're gonna continue like this. So okay, the next one is show, don't tell. Remember when I said monkey see, monkey do? Like this is the basic of that. So we go back to ChatGPT again, and I'm gonna say write a movie review about what's a recent good movie? Obsession. Obsession. Right. Okay. 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 It started right. Okay. So, yeah, essays every single time. Essays. I don't want essays. Like I want like a small, like a synopsis size review, right? Um, so it says it's a psychological thriller. Uh, the intense atmosphere is one of the greatest strengths. Blah blah blah. But let's say we make it more specific. So I'm gonna make it shorter again. And then we're gonna this time we're gonna show it as write a one line review of obsession matching these. And then we're gonna show it what it needs to act as, right? So I'm gonna say Batman begins, pure adrenaline, zero camp will redefine, define the superhero origin. And then I specify a quote. The best quote is, "Why do we fall, sir?" from Alfred, so that we can learn to pick ourselves up, right? And then we can give it one more example. The Matrix, pure cyberpunk, zero filler will redefine your reality. And then we're gonna say this: there is no spoon, right? There is no spoon, Neil. Um, so now it's gonna follow the. It's not gonna give me a whole essay. It's gonna follow these two examples, and it's gonna do what it sees, right? So it's gonna say obsession, pure temptation, zero restraint will blur the line between desire and distraction. And the top quote from this movie is, "I can't stop thinking about her." Right. So I haven't mentioned the name here. I'm just saying show or tell. But this is also called few shot prompting. And the shot here in this particular context is an example, right? So usually 2 to 3 are good for whatever you're trying to do. Um, and like doing more is just like bloating your context window. So you also want to avoid that. But usually like 2 to 3 examples of what kind of response you're expecting from it would help, right? And if you're talking about this in terms of programming, we can say, teach me how functions work, right? And then you can give it like a format, right? Like example would be example to follow. And then you can say, maybe you can talk about variable and then type variables definition here. Um, maybe give a few examples of variables. Maybe then you can ask it to say how not to use it, right? Like what are some anti patterns, in which case you should not be using variables, right? And then you can give it another topic. I will try to follow this and teach you how functions work, right? You can also do this for any business logic, any kind of API that you're using while generating. Just give it examples of what the output needs to look like, and it'll try to closely follow it, right? And finally, specify the format, right? So let's talk about games here. So you can close it again. Just open it again. And then we say, what are some good co-op games? Right. Okay. We started listing. Okay, Whole Diverse showed up. That's nice. It Takes Two also showed up. Split Fiction also showed up. Pretty good. Baldur's Gate. So yeah, it gave a huge list. I don't want to use the list again. And so we're gonna say list 5 couch co-op games as a table. So the table is the key. I want it to look in the format of a table. It needs to include the columns title, platform, players, and chaos level. 1, 2, 5. End with a 2-sentence pick for a game night. End with a 2-sentence pick for a game night. So I asked it to give me a table. It made me a table with these columns. And then it gave me like a small sentence, a small paragraph explaining which would be the one that would be the most closest to be the one that will play. Right. So if you specify what kind of format you're expecting the output in, say you want a table, let's say, uh, give me some JSON or give me some other um, format that you're expecting out of it, and it'll try its best to do it to you. You can also like make it generate YAML. So like, what does general YAML format look like, right? And yeah, it'll explain like what kind of format you're looking for, and you can pass this as an example to it too, and it'll generate it back for you, right? So name the shape, what you want, like tables, list of bullets, sections, what kind of word count are you looking for, specific format, programming formats like JSON or Tune, which is the newer one called token oriented object notation, or YAML, right? Or Markdown. So yeah, those are the 5 techniques. Be specific, give it enough context, specify the role, what it needs to take, specify the format in which you want the output, and then which is the one I'm missing? Show or tell, like include the few short examples. Give it examples of what the output it generate needs to look like, right? And this is the bonus part. So just including these terms exactly, think step by step, helps the reasoning models come up to a better response, generate a better response, right? And this also works regardless of what you're trying to do. It just asks it. So if you give it a really complicated task, go back to ChatGPT. You can say, um, make a multiplayer game or generate a schema for a multiplayer game I want to build. It's a shooter game. Think step by step. And then it's going to take its time and then try to generate the output by breaking down the task into steps. Sometimes it can also even go like a little back and forth, like what kind of things you're expecting. Wow, it generated a lot of stuff. Um, but yeah, like it's noticed across models that if you include the term step by step, it will it will produce like better responses for you, right? And this is also like a general advice too. So if you're trying to, let's say, like build like a big project, usually it's a good idea to focus on like one smaller set of feature in one particular session, and then even break down that session for that feature into multiple steps, right? So like maybe build the boilerplate code first, and then maybe talk about one particular piece of logic instead of like building the whole thing from scratch, right? So like breaking down into small pieces and working on one at a time works well with all these AI models. And this is also pretty important. So sometimes it's gonna come up with answers, uh, and this one helps in that case particular. So when you know like something's iffy about the response that it said, like something's not right, you can also ask it now, whatever you generate, now critique your answer and try to improve it. So then it's gonna take all the response back, and then it's gonna, even sometimes even if there are no mistakes, it's gonna try to create a mistake, right? Like it could be like a semantic mistake, or like it'll say like this grammar that I phrased should have been better, and it'll try to improve it, regardless of the circumstances, right? So yeah, you don't need to plan the whole thing. Like you're not gonna understand like this lady. The AI is not gonna understand. So break it down into step by step and work on one piece at a time, right? So what does a great prompt look like? Um, this is gonna include everything that we talked about so far. So you need to tell it what role it needs to have. So in this case, you are an upbeat running coach who has trained dozens of total beginners. So we're specifying exactly what kind of role this AI is taking, right? And then we're giving it context, like what the current situation is. And in this context, we're saying, I can't run for 2 minutes straight, three mornings a week, and I have bad knees, right? And what my task is I want to build a week by week plan to jog a 5K in 8 weeks. So see how I'm like specifying the constraints. I'm asking it what I want, but I also am telling it like it needs to be done in 8 weeks, right? And what the target is. And then I give it example, right? Like what the output needs to look like. Like, do I want it in the form of a table, like an sentence? And in this case, I'm just saying describe each week, like week one, jog 1 minute, walk 2 minutes, times six, and the win is just leaving the house. Like doesn't matter if you jog properly or not, right? And then we specify a format. So numbered weeks, no table, one line each, plus one recovery tip at the end. And yeah, so remember these are all important. You specify the role, you give it all the context that you currently have, you specify what it needs to do, you give it examples about what the output might look like, and then you also specify format, right? And this is what a great prompt is all about. Remember, a, a great example is if you walk into a coffee shop and you ask them, you order a coffee, but you do not specify anything about, do you want hot or cold? Do you, what kind of milk you want? What kind of syrup? What kind of, how many shots it needs to have, right? The barista is most likely going to make the most famous coffee of that shop and give it to you if you don't specify. And that's exactly, think of AI as the barista, right? AI is going to do the exact same thing. If you don't tell it what it needs to do in and put it in words, it's not going to be able to guess what you want, right? It's terrible at guessing. So specify exactly what you want, how you want it, and what the AI, the role it needs to take, right? So yeah, so now covered how you're gonna fix the prompts, and I have a task for you all. So we're gonna fix a bad prompt, and we're gonna start with the prompt, explain One Piece. Right. This show has been running since 1999. It has more than 1100 episodes. Oh, 1997. It's still not finished, still going on. And you just typed in 3 words, right? Like it's not gonna do it, no matter how good the model, it's not gonna do it any justice. So let's see what it says. To explain One Piece. Okay, fair. So it talks about the basic story. It gives like what the crew is. talks about what makes it special and like what the mystery is, and then I generate like a one sentence teaser. Now, I want you all to take maybe like 2 minutes and write out a prompt that will help you understand what One Piece is all about, the show. Include all the five things that I talked about. Specify what the task is, specify what the context is, be very specific, give it examples, what the output needs to look like, and what was the last thing? Uh, Format. What kind of format you want, right? Do you want it to show up in the form of a paragraph or like a list or like maybe like three sentences and like a few words, right? Like you are free to pick. This is your session. So, and once you're done, run it and take a screenshot of it and post it in the chat. And we'll pick maybe one or two and run it in like show it in the workshop. Cool. Everybody understand the task? Yeah, I'm open to questions too. So like if anyone has any questions, now's your time to ask. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I don't think there's any more in the GPT window. But cool, noted. I will zoom it in. Yep. Okay, okay. Let's zoom it in. 125. Sounds good. So you this like you are free to choose whatever you want. Like you can have um who's a good example? Um who's a good example? Who would be like a ridiculous example explaining One Piece? Well, yeah, I mean, I had One Piece in mind because like I want more people to watch it. But if you have like another show that you want folks to watch, you feel free to choose that too. This is just my bias. I'm just forcing it all on you. Yeah, also like we're open to questions. Gonna spend like 2 more minutes. If you have any questions, now is the time to ask them before we move on to the final section. And once you're done writing the prompt, running it, just post the screenshot of like the prompt as well as like the output that the model generated. Yes. So the task is we have this prompt which says which just has three words: explain One Piece. Which is not a good prompt, right? Like the model has no idea what kind of response we are expecting out of it. So we read it using the five techniques that we talked about, right? And then run it and see if it produces like a better output of what you wanted it to generate. If that makes sense. Okay. Any questions? Do we have any questions? Did everybody understand everything that I talked about so far? I mean, it's not particularly difficult, and this you can apply it everywhere, right? Um, yeah, just think of your local cafe shop, and I think you are mostly covered. Like, what kind of order you'd place in, right? You will be specific about everything. So just talk about all of that. Wait, do we have any questions from previously that I can answer? Or are there no questions at all? Cool. Anybody got any no questions? If there was, now is the time to repeat. Yeah. Yeah, if you have any questions, ask me, or I think we're gonna move on since time is ticking. Well, if you have a response, just type it in the chat, put it in the chat, and we can go over it at the end. Um, so cool. Okay, so the last part that I want to talk about is safety and what are the limits about what AI can do, and when you can trust and not trust the output that it generates, right? Because it's not going to be always be truthful to you, and if you take wrong information that it sends out to you and confidently present it to everyone, or like in critical business making decisions, you're gonna have like some real life consequences which might be terrible, right? So in this section we want to talk about how we make ourselves safe and what are the limits that AI has, right? And how we can identify it. So if you don't question your AI, if you don't question your model, no, doesn't matter if it's coming from GPT or of Claude or like Quinn or like thousands of other models, it's gonna assume a free, like it's no holds barred. Like it's just gonna come up with anything and everything that it reasons, predicts to be plausible based on data. And it's just gonna be like this. Like that's what I do. I drink and I know things, right? So how do we first of all, how do we identify when it's coming up with something that's not correct? And then how do we make it, well, I already mentioned one thing before that, hey, critique your response and like tell me if there are any problems that ever arisen, right? Like that's one way. But the important part is we need to keep it like reined in, like in control, so that um, it just doesn't just fly off the rails and like just start doing its own thing, right? So this is the first thing. So regardless of whether it has the correct information or not, the model is always going to be sounding confident. So it's going to say 100%, like 2 plus 5 is 10, right? We all know that's not how arithmetic works. That's going to violate so many physics and mathematics rules if we do like 2 plus 5, 10. But model is going to be absolutely confident, like no whole part, like on God is going to say everything and is going to make you believe 2 plus 5 is 10, right? And you can't blame it for it, right? Like it's not actually, well, it is reasoning, but it's trying to predict the next most plausible token. So if in the data set, if it was trained on some weird arithmetic which had 2 plus 5 10, then it is going to say 2 plus 5 10, and it's not its fault either, right? It's not your fault either. Um, so remember, it predicts plausible text, and a confident wrong answer is often more plausible than I don't know. And now, again, it depends on the model makers, but here's one thing. I want to run for 5 minutes. Can you track me? So I'm gonna say it. Okay, never mind. They already fixed it. But there was a glitch in which it ChatGPT would be like, "Hey, sure, like I'm ready to track you, like 5 minutes." It has no clock, it cannot track, and it just straight up lies to your face, like I'm tracking you, right? And then like if in the correct next second, if you ask it, "What's the time right now?" It says you're done, like 5 minutes is done, right? 5 minutes is completed. So it's going to be confident at telling you the wrong thing, right? Instead of telling you, I have no idea, right? I can't do it. So it's going to fabricate citations. It'll come up with research papers or books or links that it has never seen before. It'll come up with data. It'll make it, right? And we've seen all of these cases in news before, right? Like law cases where attorneys submitted files which contain like fake data to the court, research papers being published with like false citations when they were peer reviewed, right? All that comes up when people actually check it. Like the data doesn't exist. AI just makes it up. And the risk goes on the more specific facts, numbers, sources, or anything recent that the model was not trained on, that you keep it asking, that you keep the model, because every model has a cutoff date. You cannot keep training the model and running it at the same time. So if the model cutoff date is today, like June 18, then 2 days from now, it's not going to have the information about what happened on June 20th, right? So if it doesn't have tools to check like what happens on that day, it's most likely going to come up with information, right? I'm not sure if ChatGPT has data about like what today's date is. What is today's date? It's going to make a like a tool call, which we haven't talked about. You shouldn't know. Okay, okay, it does, right? But it's highly likely that it'll come up with data or come up with facts which are not correct. And it'll tell you sources which do not exist or like have expired, right? Um, and the most closest programming example that I can give you is when you're trying to build something with any of these models, it'll try to pick a version that's not that has been in its training data instead of going on to the site and getting like the latest data. So like if you're trying to make a Next.js app, it's going to assume you're on like Next 15 or like the not most recent Next 16. It's going to come up with a bunch of random stuff instead of like the latest information, right? And like you can test that. Explain Next 16 changes. See if it has anything. Turbo pack, use cache. Okay, that is correct. PPR, middleware proxy.ts. That is also correct. Cool. Yeah, most of the things it does talk about is correct here. Oh yeah, Node.js. I think 20 is no longer recommended, right? But yeah, minimum version it says 20. So even though it's not the most correct up to date, you should probably go to like Node 22, the LTS. It is going to tell you some of the stuff that's outdated. That might break your project in one way or another, right? So, what are some habits that keep you safe? So, verify what matters. Check any fact that you'd be embarrassed to repeat before you ship it. So, if like we can go to GitHub and then prompt engineering 101. This is where I have the slides, by the way. And in the workflow, I did not set up like this was like a Node 20 workflow, and it showed me, right, like GitHub tells you about it. But the LLM did not know about it, and it just went on creating a default workflow with Node 20, and that's not good for long term support, right? You'll have to change it again, anyways. And then when it gives you any sources, just ask it plainly, like, what is the exact link? Or if it came up with a book title, ask it which page the source exists on, or like which paragraph exactly on that page, right? If it tells you something vague, like it's on page 5 and it's not there after you checked it, then that's a red flag. Like it just made up something. And this is also important. Never paste any secrets. So that's like credentials, like your credit cards, API keys, customer data, or like any personally identifiable information, like any PII. Anything under like agreements that should stay out of any chats most of the time. And every single output is a draft, right? Like AI will generate stuff for you, but it should never be um, that should never be put into production as is, right? It should not be used without verifying, double checking everything. Um, so treat that draft as an output from like a brilliant, overconfident intern, but review it as if it's your own work, right? So like, would you expect the intern to make your decisions for you? Of course not, right? So that's not something you should be expecting out of AI. And iterating is the most important thing, right? So whenever you write a prompt, you will give it to AI, it'll generate something, and then you need to update the prompt again. You need to iterate on it, like add a few examples, change the tone, ask it to generate few more words, right? Like, or fewer words. Um, and you need to keep on iterating it and making it better over time. Remember, the first draft of your prompt is never the last one, and none of the companies that you work with, like Claude, ChatGPT, like the models, they have their own system prompts. Those are never the final. Like, they go through like hundreds of iterations before they are put into production. They go through hundreds of tests, right? The evals that they run on it. So first answer is not right. Don't start over. Just talk back to it like, hey, I want this shorter, or I want the tone to be more formal, or you missed the budget constraint. Like you said it like 200 words and it went over like by 300 words. Then you also need to understand, as we talked about before, that the model has the entire conversation available to it. It has its own memory, right? The model has no memory of its own. Anything you type, anything that stays in the chat gets bundled up, thrown to the model. It tries to generate the whole next possible thing and sends the whole thing back to you again. Right. So every time you try to refine it, it has like the full context of it into its memory. And yeah, like if you try to do something the first time and it fails, like don't worry about it. Like that's the standard view. There is no definitive way of working with LLMs. Like it's all non-deterministic, right? You cannot ask it the same thing twice and expect the exact same answer. It's non-deterministic by nature. So whenever you write a prompt, just 2 or 3 rounds of refinement is like pretty normal, and it's not considered any failure, right? Like even if you have to do like 10, 20 rounds of refinement, it's all fine. Yeah. So finally, before we call it, let's review. So what are the 5 things that we talked about? We want to be specific, right? Like what kind of length, audience purpose, what kind of constraints. We want to give it context, like what kind of space it's working in, what's the um in the jogging example we gave it, like I can't run for 2 minutes or like 3 times, right? So that's like the current context, like what's the current situation. Assign it a role, like tell it what it needs to act as, and then give it examples like what it needs to generate the output as. Monkey do, monkey see, monkey do. And then finally specify the format, right? Like, do you want it in the table shape of a table, JSON, YAML, 2 paragraphs, 10 words, right? And it'll do it for you. And then finally, this is the important part, you need to iterate the prompt. It's never going to be correct the first time. It's probably going to make mistakes if you keep using it like multiple times. So iterate on it, verify if it's trying to be correct, like if it's trying to meet your constraints. And very, very important, never paste any secrets, no credit card information, no personally identifiable information, all that, right? Um, and remember, prompt prompting is the only lever you have while working with AI. It has no other senses. It's not gonna feel you, like understand your feelings based on your face or your mood or whatever. So the way you type it in, the way you explain it, the way you ask it to respond is the only thing you can control. And if you structure it nicely using all these 5 points, it's highly likely that it's gonna give you a response in a way that's gonna be helpful to whatever you're trying to do, right? So yeah, that's the end of the workshop. Sorry, it went a little over, but do we have any questions before we uh, close this? Yeah, that was a long one. I hope like everybody took like a few things from here. Um, yeah, prompt engineering is a skill, right? Like you need to understand like what kind of system you're working with, and once you understand, like you can have like a basic framework of like these 5 things that if I do, I'm gonna get better responses out of AI, right? And I feel like this is as important as learning to speak a language, like any language, right? English or whatever. Because models are essentially like something you are talking to, and like if you don't understand what kind of language that they prefer, then it's likely that there's going to be some miscommunication and you're not going to get the full value out of it, right? So let's see, I got tagged by Eric. Oh, okay. Okay, Eric has generated, you are John. Okay, let me pull up Discord here. And wait, what flavor is Stafford GPT? Explain One Piece, a long-running hit animated manga, to a 10x. It should be detailed and clear. Give your opinion on the show and if I should watch it. What? Eric, I think if you want to jump up on and like do the impression of John Daffer, like I'll be happy to listen to that. But yeah, this is pretty good. So you specified what the role is. You specified what the task is, right? You specified who it needs to be, like who it needs explaining to. You specified what you are expecting out of it. You're being very specific, and then finally give your opinion. You're also asking for it to generate some more things, like your opinion on the show, right? Yeah, it just started generating paragraphs, and it ended with, now like, so I got a bar to run and some fictitious hipsters to educate. Nice. Oh, we have one more. Analyze the core themes of One Piece, specifically focusing on the concepts of inherited will, D no Ishi, the flow of time, and people's dreams. How do these three concepts drive the overarching narrative of the story? So, okay, if we look at this prompt, we're missing what role the LLM needs to play, like what it needs to act as. We have the task, but we don't have, you're not telling output, like what we're expecting out of, like, is it like three paragraphs or like few images in a paragraph, or like, right, like there are no examples either, right? So we can stretch this prompt out a little bit to make it even more clear. But I think it starts talking about uh the this is story is answer to mortality in One Piece's world. Wait, is this okay? It's getting into it. But yeah, do we have any more prompts that I should be reading? Okay, we have a few questions here. I'll go through. Okay, from Kai. I have a question. I mostly work on an embedded projects and often use Claude. Let me turn off streaming. Often use Claude for advice and proper strategizing, but of course, as the chat gets long, it starts to lose context. Firstly, how do you split a project? Is it in multiple chats, in the same chat, but in multiple pieces? Like, how do you do it, or is it using projects better? So, okay, this is a good question. And this is something that we not talked about in this particular workshop. But the question is, how do I manage my context window for Claude so that like it remembers better based on everything that we talked about in the chat. So again, remember, I mentioned this in the workshop that models have no memory of their own, right? Anytime we type a message, whatever it generates gets sent back to us, right? And like if we try to send it something else again, like if we try to keep prompting it, if we try to keep asking it again and again, all of that context stays in the database and gets sent back to the LLM, and then it generates the next thing and sends it all back, right? But the models that the context the models and can hold is not infinite, right? I think Claude has like maybe like a million word context window now, token context window, but it's not infinite, right? So previously, like when like these tools came out, I think what they used to do is, as the chat gets longer, they try to take off the messages from the time from the previous messages that you asked previously, and then summarize it and feed it back to the provider. So if you're trying to generate a summary, and the company is doing this for you, you're not asking it to be done, right? So they're going to summarize it and put the chat back in so that like you can ask it more stuff without filling up the context window. This is also another reason why these companies ask you that if the chat is going too long, try to switch to a new chat. And previously, they also used to show like, hey, this we have hit like the limit of context in this chat. You cannot continue any longer. So they just used to stop you, right? So that also happens. So ideally, that's also another reason why you should be thinking step by step and breaking down whatever problem you're trying to work on. So if you're working on a big project, try to maybe narrow it down to like a smaller module. And if it needs to work with other modules, give it context, right? Like this module, how it connects with like this module and this module. That goes in part of the context. Not, it doesn't need to know the whole information, right? And then you can break it down, right? So like your chat does not get context bloated, and like you have more time to work it. But if it does get it's highly recommended that you switch to a newer chat, and then you're going to lose all the context and going to start from scratch, which is something that we have to work with. That's a limitation of our technology, right? And then two, uh, yeah, that's also another reason why like managing context is important. How do you ask? Like if I only keep asking it for like less than 100 words or like 200 words, then like I'm gonna have more context to myself while chatting with the model, right? Wait, that was the first question. What was the next question? Eric, can you tag me in a couple of questions? Okay, here's one from LCVMC. For you personally, do you want a model to have a high temperature, high creativity, or a low one, low creativity, and why? So okay, this is a good question, and this is even you won't see this in UIs like while working with like Claude or ChatGPT, but if you're working with like APIs and like working with models on the back end, you're gonna have a particular property called temperature. And this just indicates randomness, like how random the model can be when trying to come up with an answer, right? And like there's no right or wrong answer for this. It honestly depends on the use case. But I'd say like I prefer the temperature to be as low as possible. And here's a couple of reasons why. Um, Usually it goes from like 0 to 1. I mean, the closer to 1, like if you put it at 1, it starts generating gibberish and like random ASCII codes. It looks like alien language to you, right? It's not even English at that point. So, and again, remember, it's just generating tokens, not even words. So the more high the temperature, it's gonna pick like random words and put them together as a response and give it to you. But again, like it depends on a case by case basis and what I'm trying to build. Um, and like you only can give a good answer for it after you have run that model and like a few evals or like experiments you run on it based on the system prompt and what the user are working on in that particular API call, right? So I hope that helps. Preferably low temperature, but if you need high, just make sure that you run evals on it regularly so that it doesn't come up with gibberish. Cool. Okay, what's the next question? Oh, someone wrote XML. Okay, here, I'm gonna share my screen again. Here we go. Oh, it's from LCVMC. Yeah. So this is also one of the things that I haven't talked about today in prompting techniques. But if you can pass in XML tags, which is just like tag in what kind of content it is, like in this particular case, you specified main goal, and this is what the LLM needs to focus on. What's the sub goal? Uh, what's the chain of thought? What are the examples, and what is the target audience? This is another way of specifying um, how it needs to respond to you. And this also makes it clearer to the model itself, like which particular piece of text, what it represents, right? Because we are literally tagging it with XML. But try to see if like can find out like clearer XML tags. Usually there are I mean, you can come up with any tag, like it's just tagging at that point. But this also adds to like context blur, right? Because every single tag is like you have an opening tag, an ending tag, for every piece of text, and then like across the conversation, that just like adds up to the context window. So yeah, that'll help. So okay, I did that sub summary, and from Aki, imagine you're an anime enthusiastic. Okay, that you're giving it the role, you're telling it the task. I don't know anything about it. You're giving it context. You have zero knowledge about anime. Have no knowledge. Okay, and then explain season wise with points. You're asking it. Okay, so this is a pretty good prompt. And you need to keep iterating on it. Like once you got the output, is this what you were expecting? Right? If you know what's anime, I'd explain One Piece like bunch of movies, and then it starts with like some explain about the story, right? So yeah, that's cool. Any more questions before we call it? Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining today. I hope this workshop helped you learning about how to prompt your AI, and it taught you what kind of language you need to speak while talking to like AI in general, right? And yeah, if you have more questions, feel free to ping me on Discord or like make a post in on the on-platform community on Codedex too, and we'll hop in and help you out with anything AI really. And yeah, thank you so much for joining today, and I hope you have a good one. I'll see you on the next workshop. Bye bye.